Hello, intrepid travelers and connoisseurs of the fairer sex. Welcome to Euthenia Travels, your one-stop shop for all things exotic, and extra exotic. Today, we're taking you on a journey to a hidden gem of Eastern Europe that's not just about its low cost of living and tractors, yes, you read that right, but also about its truly captivating women. That's right, we're talking about Belarus. Now, before we dive into the tantalizing details, let me entice you a bit. Picture this, the streets of Minsk, lined with women who could give the runway models a run for their money. These women aren't just beautiful, they're confident, educated, and not afraid to show their feminine side, often sporting high heels and makeup even for casual outings. Trust me, they're worth the extra pair of sunglasses you might need to shield your eyes from their dazzling beauty. Now, if that's not enough to convince you, how about we talk about the Belarusian dating scene? Dating in Belarus is a bit like a game of cat and mouse. The men pursue, and the women tease, often playing hard to get. But don't let that discourage you, the chase is part of the fun. It's a game of wits and charm, and if you play your cards right, you might just win the heart of a beautiful Belarusian woman. Heart and arrow. And let's not forget about the traditional courting customs. In Belarus, a man is expected to bring flowers and small gifts when he's courting a woman. But it's not just the gifts that matter. In Belarus, it's all about the romance. From candlelit dinners to long walks in the park, Belarusian women love a man who knows how to sweep them off their feet. Dancer. And once you're in a relationship, the romance doesn't stop. Belarusian couples often celebrate dating anniversaries, which are mini anniversaries that mark important milestones in their relationship. For example, they might celebrate their 100-day anniversary, or their half-year anniversary. But let's be real, beauty and romance aren't the only things that make Belarusian women so irresistible. They're also extremely independent and ambitious. Biceps. In fact, Belarusian women make up more than 60% of university graduates. And these aren't just any universities, we're talking about some of the top universities in Europe. And it doesn't stop there. Belarusian women are also successful in the workforce, with many holding leadership positions in government and business. But don't worry, Belarusian women aren't just workaholics. They also know how to have a good time. Dancer. From clubbing to outdoor festivals, these women love to let loose and enjoy themselves. And with a nightlife scene that's known for its energetic parties and trendy clubs, Belarus is definitely a place to see and be seen. And of course, we can't forget about the infamous Belarusian bachelorette parties. These events are a bit like a cross between a prom and a wild night out with the girls. You see, in Belarus, it's not uncommon for women to throw extravagant bachelorette parties that involve lots of dancing, drinking, and sometimes even a bit of mischief. Bottle with popping cork. For example, it's not unusual for the bride to be kidnapped by her friends and taken on a surprise adventure. They might take her to a strip club or a karaoke bar, or even dress her up in a costume and make her dance on a table. Astonished face. But hey, that's just part of the fun. Now, let's talk about marriage in Belarus. Unlike in some countries where people tend to wait until their late 20s or early 30s to get married, in Belarus, it's quite common for people to tie the knot in their early 20s. Ring. And when they do get married, the weddings are often quite traditional. For example, the bride and groom might wear traditional Belarusian folk costumes, like embroidered shirts and colorful skirts for the bride, and a buttoned-up shirt and dress pants for the groom. And did I mention the food? The wedding feast, or svadba, is a major highlight of the Belarusian wedding. Guests are treated to a variety of traditional dishes, like kalduni, stuffed dumplings, zirazi, stuffed patties, and, of course, lots and lots of vodka. Wine. But it's not just about the food. Belarusian weddings are also known for their lively music and dancing. Guests might do the kazakok, a traditional Belarusian dance that involves a lot of twirling and jumping. But before you book your ticket to Belarus to find yourself a bride, let's talk about the dating do's and don'ts. For starters, do be chivalrous. Offer to pay for dinner, hold the door open, and give her your coat if she's cold. But don't be too forward. In Belarus, it's considered rude to try to kiss a woman on the first date. Instead, wait until she initiates it. Winking face. And whatever you do, don't be late. Arriving late is a big no-no in Belarusian culture. In fact, it's considered rude to arrive more than 5 minutes late to a date. And trust me, you don't want to upset a Belarusian woman, they can have quite a temper if you cross them. Look of triumph. And speaking of temper, here's a fun fact for you. In Belarus, it's common to blame bad weather on a woman's temper. Yes, you heard that right. If there's a sudden thunderstorm or blizzard, Belarusians might say that it's because a woman is in a bad mood. It's all in good fun, of course, but it's a bit of a running joke in the country. Tongue out. And while we're on the subject of Belarusian humor, let's talk about the country's love for practical jokes. Practical jokes, or shalaevsentvo, are a big part of the Belarusian sense of humor. For example, it's not uncommon for friends to prank each other by hiding things, playing harmless tricks, or even dressing up in disguises and pretending to be someone else. Rolling on the floor laughing. And while we're talking about humor, let's discuss the interesting tradition of laughter therapy. In Belarus, laughter therapy is a popular way to relieve stress and improve overall health. Groups of people gather to laugh, sometimes for hours at a time, with the belief that laughter can cure everything from colds to depression. And speaking of laughter, we can't forget about the infamous Laughter Olympics. Party Popper. This annual event takes place in the Belarusian city of Gomel, and it's exactly what it sounds like. People from all over the country gather to compete in laughter-based competitions, like laughing for the longest time or doing the most ridiculous thing to make others laugh. It's a bit like, whose line is it anyway? But with way more laughs and way less Drew Carey. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about religion in Belarus. The country is primarily Eastern Orthodox Christian. To look for the mythical fern flower, which is said to bloom only once a year on this night. Rose. If you find the flower, you can make a wish and it will supposedly come true. But be careful, legend has it that if you're not pure of heart, you might get lost in the forest and never return. Fearful face. And speaking of getting lost, let's talk about the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Located on the border between Belarus and Ukraine, the Chernobyl exclusion zone is a ghost town, abandoned since the infamous nuclear accident in 1986. Nauseated face. Despite its tragic history, the exclusion zone has become a tourist destination, drawing visitors from all over the world who are interested in the eerie, post-apocalyptic vibe. But the exclusion zone isn't just about nuclear disaster tourism. It's also home to a unique ecosystem that's been left untouched by humans for nearly 40 years. That's right, without humans around, the wildlife in the exclusion zone has flourished. Animals like wolves, bears, and even Przewalski horses, a species that was once considered extinct, have made the area their home. Bear horse. And the exclusion zone isn't just good for wildlife, it's also good for the environment. With no human activity, the area has become a carbon sink, absorbing more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than it produces. And let's not forget about the people who live near the exclusion zone. In Belarus, there's a group of elderly women who are known as the babushkas of Chernobyl. These women, many of whom were born in the 1930s, chose to return to their homes in the exclusion zone after the evacuation. They grow their own food, raise livestock, and maintain the traditional way of life that existed before the disaster. Tomato chicken. Despite the risks, these women say they feel more alive in the exclusion zone than they ever did in the city. But let's not get too wrapped up in nuclear fallout and creepy abandoned villages. Let's lighten things up with some Belarusian fairy tales. One of the most famous is the story of the Kupalinka, a magical flower that blooms on Kupala night. Sound familiar? Rose. In the story, a young girl finds the flower and makes a wish to be the most beautiful girl in the world. But the wish comes with a price. The Kupalinka turns the girl into a flower, trapping her in a beautiful but lonely existence. The story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of vanity and greed, but it's also a reminder of the power of nature and the importance of respecting the world around us. And speaking of nature, did you know that Belarus has some of the last remaining European bison, also known as wisent bison? These massive beasts, which can weigh up to a ton, are a protected species in Belarus, with populations in several national parks. And speaking of national parks, Belarus has some truly stunning natural areas, from the ancient forests of Belovezskaya Pushcha to the crystal-clear lakes of Braslov Lakes. But the most iconic of all might be the Pripyat River, which runs through the Chernobyl exclusion zone and is home to some of the most beautiful, untouched landscapes in the world. National Park. And of course, we can't forget about the traditional folk music of Belarus. The country has a rich musical heritage, with a variety of instruments like the dudka, a type of wooden flute, the gudok, a stringed instrument, and the balalaika, a triangular stringed instrument. Violin. One of the most famous Belarusian folk songs is, Oj, Dunaju Dunajek, a haunting tune about a young girl who falls in love with a river boatman. But the music scene in Belarus isn't just about folk songs and traditional instruments. The country has also produced some amazing modern musicians, like the rock band Lapis Trubetskoy and the pop singer Anastasia. Mike. In fact, Belarus has a thriving underground music scene, with everything from punk rock to EDM. And let's not forget about the Belarusian circus. The Belarusian circus is no ordinary circus. It's a high-flying, death-defying spectacle that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Woman cartwheeling. From trapeze artists to acrobats, these performers are some of the best in the world, and they've been dazzling audiences for decades. In fact, the Belarusian circus tradition dates back to the 19th century, when traveling circus troupes would perform in towns and villages across the country. But the circus isn't the only place to catch some amazing performances in Belarus. There are also a variety of theaters and concert halls throughout the country, like the Bolshoi Theater in Minsk and the Kupala Theater in Brest. And speaking of theater, let's talk about the Belarusian tradition of masquerade or masquerade. During the winter holidays, people in Belarus don colorful masks and costumes and dance in the streets. The masquerade is a way to ward off evil spirits and usher in the new year with good luck and prosperity. But it's also a chance to let loose and have some fun. And speaking of fun, let's not forget about Belarusian cuisine. Dumpling, fork and knife with plate. Belarusians love their potatoes, and they use them in just about everything, from hearty soups to crispy dumplings. But potatoes aren't the only thing on the menu in Belarus. There's also plenty of meats, like smoked ham and sausage, and plenty of dairy products, like sour cream and cottage cheese. Bacon cheese wedge. And for dessert, there's always the famous korji, the thin wafers filled with sweet goodness that we talked about earlier. Yummy face. But food isn't the only thing that Belarus is known for. We can't forget about the country's sporting traditions. Belarus has produced some amazing athletes, like the tennis star Victoria Azarenka and the hockey player Andrei Kostitsyn. Tennis, ice hockey. But perhaps the most famous Belarusian sport is biathlon. Biathlon is a combination of cross-country skiing and rifle shooting, and it's kind of like a cross between the Olympics and an action movie. Cool. And while we're on the subject of biathlon, did you know that Belarus has its own biathlon academy? So there you have it, a whirlwind tour of the fascinating country of Belarus, from its stunning women and rich cultural traditions to its unique sports and breathtaking landscapes. Snow-capped mountain ski fishing. Whether you're looking for love, adventure, or just a good laugh, Belarus has something for everyone. So pack your bags, grab your sunglasses, and get ready for a wild ride through one of Europe's hidden gems. Belarus. Thanks for tuning into Euthenia Travels, and don't forget to subscribe for more wild adventures around the globe.